Hi, it's Ronnie with Plan to Eat, and today I want to talk about the planning systems that I have in my life that keep me sane and keep my life organized. I know sometimes when we talk about planning or systems, it can feel like you don't necessarily want to do that because it can be restrictive or make your life and your schedule feel too rigid. But I actually think that when you have some systems in place and you plan a few things ahead, your life can run more on autopilot. And you will quickly discover that it is because of the systems that you have put in place that your life runs a whole lot more smoothly. There are tons of planning tools and frameworks and systems out there. So I encourage you to find the ones that work best for you and your life. Today, I'm going to share with you how I organize my life and the systems that I have in place for it. And I'm also going to show you how to keep these systems as effective as possible. Okay, my number one planning tool slash system is my daily planner. So I keep a paper planner. I like a weekly vertical planner so that I can plan out individual days, but I can also look at my week as a whole. So basically, my system for my planner is that on a week to week basis, I write down all of the things that I need to do, any appointments or meetings or things that were previously scheduled. I like to highlight those in my planner so that way they really pop out at me, and I don't forget something because it's just kind of jumbled on the page. But then I also go through and each day I write down different tasks that need to be done. Most of this is work related, but sometimes it's things just like remembering to water the plants. It really helps for me to have specific items on specific days so that way I can just cross things off as I get them done during the day, which is also very satisfying. But then it also makes sure that I don't forget things or just keep pushing things off to the end of the week. The times when a physical planner saves me the most is when something is scheduled far ahead in advance, like a dentist appointment that you don't schedule out for another 6 months. When I get home from the dentist, I just go into my planner, flip through 6 months, and then write my dentist appointment on my planner. So that way, when that week comes around and I flip over to a new page, I say, oh, we have a dentist appointment this week. And I don't run into those moments very often anymore where I think, oh my gosh, I completely forgot about that thing because it's been written down in my planner potentially for months. And so it's much easier for me to keep track of those things and also not try to keep track of all of those things in my head, which I will inevitably forget. I also use a yearly calendar. It's a big year calendar that's on the wall in my office. And this is what I use to track birthdays. It's a great place for me to write down everybody's birthday at the beginning of the year so that way I don't forget any of them. It's also a great place for me personally to track my habits. I really like to track habits more on a monthly or an annual basis to keep that consistency going. So I use little stickers and highlighters and different things on my calendar to keep track of when I have done certain habits so that at the end of the year, I can look back and see what a success the year was. Okay, another must have system for me, which is honestly a little bit of a messy system, but we all have our own ways of doing things, is to do lists. While my planner often functions as a to do list, I also keep separate lists for things like chores that need to be done around the house, errands that need to be run, maybe things that I need to make sure I tell my husband at the end of the day, just all the stuff that can clutter my mind that needs to get down on paper so that I can free up a little bit of brain space. And my favorite tool for this is just honestly a sticky note. I keep sticky notes all over the house with these little notes and lists and messages to myself. And I find it really helpful. And again, it's very cathartic to be able to cross things off the list at the end of the day and when I get done doing them. A third system that I swear by, and this is coming, is meal planning. Meal planning has been a game changer in my life. Previous to meal planning, I was constantly doing the 5 p.m. scramble of what are we going to eat for dinner tonight? Looking in the fridge, looking in the cupboards, trying to figure out what we had that we could make a recipe with. Inevitably, we didn't have all of the things for a recipe that we wanted to make. And so we'd end up at the grocery store. I spent a ton more money at the grocery store back then because we were going to the grocery store 3 or 4 times a week. And everybody knows that you can't go to the grocery store and only buy the one or two things that you need. We always have to buy about 7 things. And so a $15 grocery trip inevitably turned into a $45 or $65 grocery trip And we were just wasting a bunch of money on those things because we didn't have a plan for them. They were just random purchases, maybe aspirational purchases, things that we hoped we would get to eating and then they never actually would get eaten and they would just get thrown in the trash. So now I have a weekly system where I plan roughly 4 meals every week. And this helps me account for recipes that might make leftovers or a spontaneous night going out to eat. That way we're not over planning and ending up with too much food that we throw away at the end of the week. And of course, I use Plan to Eat for my meal planning because it keeps all my recipes in one place. It has a planning calendar where I can just drag and drop my recipes to whatever day we're going to eat them. And then the very best part is having a shopping list made for me that lives in my phone. So when I go to the grocery store, I haven't left my shopping list on the counter. It's organized by the aisles of my grocery store. I love the Plan to Eat shopping list. If you plan other areas of your life, but you're not meal planning yet, you will be amazed at how much time and energy it gives you back. All right, the final system that I have in my life that really helps reduce brain chatter and the endless thoughts going on in my head is I just simply keep a journal. I don't necessarily journal every single day, although there have been points in my life when I have done that. But journaling for me is such a cathartic experience to work through different emotions, different thoughts, things that I'm worried about, things that I'm excited about, and just kind of get a perspective on what I'm thinking about. Now, there are two different types of journaling that I tend to do. One of them is dump journaling, which is just going through and writing down everything that's in your head, whether it's things that need to be on your to-do list, things that you're worried about, things you need to tell your spouse, anything that's going on in your head when you just feel like you have too many competing thoughts going on at one time. And then after that, I'll go through and I will kind of organize those thoughts into the different categories. Do they need to go into my planner? Do they need to go on a to-do list? Should it be something that I sit down and actually write more about? Which is kind of where my second journaling process comes in, which is just free writing. So again, I will just take something that I've been thinking a lot about. Maybe it's something that's happening in the future, something that happened in the past. And I just need to get some of the thoughts around that out of my head. I love to just spend some time journaling about it and analyzing my own thought process. When I journal, I feel like I really tend to work through whatever the problem is. And I can also see the faults in some of my logic around things. It's amazing how solutions tend to present themselves to me if I just continue writing about it. All right, so the best way to make the most of your planning is, of course, to do it in the first place. Sometimes that can be the biggest hurdle is to just get started. But the way to make the most out of it is not to always be looking forward and trying to figure out what the next move is, but it's actually to also take some time to reflect, figure out what's working, what hasn't worked, and what needs to be changed. Now, an obvious time for a lot of people to do this is at the end of the year or the beginning of the new year and reflect on the last 365 days to see what could be different in the new year. However, I find that a full year review can be a little overwhelming because I honestly don't remember what happened last January. So it makes it really hard to reflect on that time period. Instead, I like to reflect on a month to month basis. So, one thing I do is look back at my planner and make sure that there's nothing in there that just continually got moved from one week to the next. We all have those tasks that we just continually push off and push off. And so, if I have any of those that happened in the previous month, I make sure it gets done as soon as possible because I don't like any of those lingering things to come forward with me into the next month. I also will review my wall calendar and look at the habits that I'm tracking and seeing how consistent I was, if I would like to be more consistent in the upcoming month, or if there's anything that I can do to make sure that I am staying on track with my habits. Now, the other thing I like to do is when I'm looking back at the previous month, I like to think about what the feeling was of the previous month. Was it a month that kind of lacked social connection or time with friends? And if so, how can I plan more get togethers with people this upcoming month? Or was it a month that was way too stressful because we had too many things booked back to back? Well, let's try to make the schedule a little more flexible and have a little more open space in the coming month. And these are just things that I do to try and create more of what I want in my life. And again, I find this easier to do on a month to month basis versus a year over year because I don't always remember what February felt like last year, but I can remember what the last month felt like in my life. So while some of these systems are certainly to help with some productivity, such as my planner and my to-do list, in general, for me, having planning systems in place is about reducing my mental load and making sure that I keep track of important things. If you don't already have some planning systems in place for your life, you don't need to do all of them. You just need to figure out the few that work for you, just like I've shown you what works for me here today. So I hope you'll pick a few things and you'll start planning ahead a little bit, put some systems in place in your life, and get some of that brain power back. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you again soon in another video.